Hi friends, and happy Friday. Before we jump into the weekend, I thought I'd jump on YouTube and give you guys a little update on my reading. So today we're going to talk about what I've read, what I'm reading, and what I plan to read next. But first, guess who went book shopping this weekend? Me. But if you did too, let me know what you picked up in the comments below. Now cue the B-roll. I found a lot of great books while I was at the bookstore, but I was good and I kept myself to only 3. So let's talk about what I picked up. The first book I picked up is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. This I picked up because Leslie at Nerdy Narrative read it and she loved it, and so I thought I'd give it a try. The only thing I know about this book is it's horror, and I like to go into my horror books blind. So if you want to know more about the book, I will link Leslie's review of it in the description below. The next book I picked up is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This was Elliot Brooks' Patreon pick for Buddy Read last month. I didn't get to it. I had a lot of other books last month, but there was a lot of love for this in the Discord, so I hope to get to it soon. It is a fantasy novel, and it's about a daughter who is looking to prove herself worthy to her father, who is the emperor, and there's bone magic. I'm really excited to get to this one. Then I picked up A Court of Thorn and Roses. This is a buddy read as well with a friend of mine, Brandy. She wants to read this with me. It'll be my first fantasy romance. I'm not sure if that's true, but I think it is. So I'm excited to get to this as well. The last 2 books that I picked up are self-published books. The first one is Dreams of the Dying by Nicholas Letzow. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. This is a grimdark fantasy about a mercenary who is lives in a land that it's on the cusp of civil war, and the king is the only one who could stop it from happening, but he's in a coma. So the mercenary is called to help the king, and it just sounds really good, and I'm excited to start this one. The last self-published book that I picked up is The Dark That Dwells. This one, I'm not sure what it's about. This is by Matt Digman and Ryan Roddy. This is a buddy read for Steve Talks About Books and Stuff. We'll be reading this in September. However, I highly recommend that you check out his channel. I will link it in the description because we are doing a buddy read every month. Now let's talk about the books that I read. The first book I finished this week is The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. This is an Asian-inspired fantasy. Some will say it's grimdark. It's very different than a lot of grimdark books that I've read. The main story follows a 14-year-old boy and his mother. I have to say that I really like the idea of having a female protagonist that is a mother. It doesn't happen very often in fantasy at all. And her story is amazing. The story has a lot of elemental magic in it. The different people have different types of magic, all very elemental. And the female character, the mother, has to fight to keep her family alive. And it is just an incredible book. I gave this 5 stars. I do want to continue reading the, I think it's Theonite series written by the same author. There are spin-offs, but I think they were written before this was. But this book, towards the end, it kind of hints at what's going to happen in the other two, so I will be jumping on those soon. The second book I finished this week is Nocturne by H.B. Diaz. This was a 52-page book with a bunch of different short stories that are horror, and I will say that every one of the stories were very different. There were ghost stories, there were suspenseful stories, there were creepy crawly, monster stories. I did not like the whole book. There were some stories I liked better than others, but overall I did give this book 2 stars. I just found the writing was not my style. However, because I felt that some stories that I didn't like as much kind of biased the stories that came after, I do want to reread this. But I want to read one story at a time. That way when I go into a new story, I go into it fresh, and I may enjoy it more that way. The last book I read this week was The Hating Game. That's by Sally Thorne. And it's a romantic comedy. And I have to tell you, it was recommended to me by my friend Brandy. I started it in the evening. I thought, I'll just read a few chapters. And I could not go to bed until I was done. The banter between the two characters, Lucy and Joshua, was so hilarious. I laughed, but then I found myself crying, and then I was laughing while I was crying. It was a heartwarming story. It was perfect. It was just what I needed to transition from the grimdark fantasy that I had been reading to the next books that I plan on reading. Now let's talk about what I'm reading. I'm reading The Last Argument of Kings by Joe Abercrombie. That is the final book in the First Law trilogy. And actually, I want to share an announcement with you. Myself, along with Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative, Steve Talks About Books and Stuff, and Jolene Reads will be having a live discussion on Leslie's channel on May 2nd. I think that's a Sunday. I'm not sure the time, but I will go ahead and put the information in the description below. This will be on Leslie's channel, as I said, but we will be discussing the whole trilogy. But if you haven't read all of the books yet, and you just want to see the discussion for the first book, The Blade Itself, or the second book, Before They Are Hanged, we did have live discussions for those as well, and I will link them in the description below. Now, I want to talk about what I plan to read next. The first book that I want to start is an audiobook. It is by Matt Haig called The Midnight Library. I know very little about this, although it has been very popular in BookTube. All I know is that it takes place in a library with an infinite number of books, each book sharing the life of the person based on decisions that they made. And each one is different. It's kind of like an alternate reality. And I'm really excited to read it. I love Matt Haig. I mostly listen to the audiobooks of his stories, and I just really enjoy them. They're very good stories, they're fun, and if you've read it, let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. Next, if I finish The Last Argument of Kings, I do want to get back into the Grishaverse with Siege and Storm. This is the second book in the Storm Shadow and Bone series by Leigh Bardugo. I do know that the TV series on Netflix came out. If it didn't come out today, it's coming out soon. And I want to watch the show, but I want to finish the trilogy first. But we got to get through the second book. I hope to finish this by the end of the month. Maybe I'll start the first few episodes of the TV series before I move on to the third book. But Leslie, if you're watching this and you want to do a reaction video watching the TV show after you finish the books as well, let me know. I would love to do it with you. For the rest of you, please comment below and let me know what you're reading this week. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time.